Hello, holiday heroes! Welcome back to another World Traveler Wednesday with Miss Rosie. I hope you enjoyed traveling to Australia with me last Wednesday. And like last week, make sure you have your international passport handy so afterwards we can give ourselves a little travel stamp on where we travel to today. And I also wanted to check in again to make sure you are coloring off your maps on where we go each week. I know last week I did a little check-in and made sure you all have Canada colored off and Egypt. Now your map should look just like this and have Australia colored off as well. So let's figure out where we're flying to today. Today we are traveling to South Korea. South Korea is located in Eastern Asia and sits on the southern half of the Korean Peninsula. The only land borders are with North Korea, with which South Korea shares the Korean Peninsula. The Korean Peninsula is 750 miles long, with South Korea making up 45% of it. The Korean Peninsula is surrounded by the West Sea/the Yellow Sea, the South Sea/the East China Sea, and the East Sea/the Sea of Japan. The main islands of Japan lie 120 miles southeast of the South Korean coast across the Korean Strait. United until the late 1940s, the two Koreas share much of their culture and history. Today, however, they are separated by a demilitarized zone that was established at the end of the Korean War in 1953. About half of the country's people live in its capital, Seoul, or near the city in the metropolitan area. Seoul's metropolitan area is one of the most populous metropolitan areas in the entire world. In fact, some sources say it is the second most populous after Tokyo, Japan. South Korea's population more than doubled over the second half of the 20th century. Birth rates decreased rapidly after 1960, however. By the beginning of the 21st century, the rate of population growth was very low. During the same period, the urban population grew rapidly as people residing in rural areas moved to the cities. Today, roughly half the population lives in the country's largest cities. Thus, although the country's population growth rate is low, its overall population density is very high, about 2.5 times that of North Korea. The biggest cities in South Korea are Seoul, with 10 million people, Busan, with 4.5 million people, Incheon, with about 2.8 million people, and Daegu, with 2.3 million people. South Korea can be divided into 4 general regions: an eastern region of high mountain ranges and narrow coastal plains, a western region of broad coastal plains, river basins, and rolling hills, a southwestern region of mountains and valleys, and a southeastern region dominated by the broad basin of the Nakdong River. Nakdong River is the longest river in South Korea. It is 320 miles long. The river passes through the cities of Busan and Daegu in the southeastern part of the country. Chengju Lake is the largest lake in South Korea. This lake in central South Korea is not a natural lake, as it has been created by flooding of the valleys after the construction of the Chengju Dam. South Korea is largely mountainous, with small valleys and narrow plains along the coast. The Taebaek Mountains run in roughly a north to south direction along the east coast and northward into North Korea. The range has many spurs to the west and south. The longest spur, the Taebaek Mountains, extends to the southwestern corner of the peninsula. None of South Korea's mountains are very high. The highest mountain of South Korea is the Halasan, also called Mount Hala, with a height of 6,400 feet. The Halasan is a shield volcano and one of 3 volcanic mountains on the Korean Peninsula. South Korea sits on the Ring of Fire, where earthquakes and volcanic eruptions occur. The Halasan is an active volcano, however, it has not erupted in many centuries. The mountain is located on the island of Jeju. Jeju is the largest South Korean island and located to the south of the peninsula. It has a moderate climate and is a popular holiday destination. There are more than 3,000 islands, mainly off of the southern and western coastlines of South Korea. The original vegetation of the Korean peninsula was significant for many varieties of trees, shrubs, and flowering plants. But the rich forests that once covered most of the peninsula have been largely removed from the plains and the nearby mountain slopes. Some species were entirely thinned out. However, broad areas were cut too often to allow new trees to mature, and artificial plantings favored a new fast-growing species. Most of the country has mixed forests of oak, pine, elm, beech, and poplar. The narrow subtropical belt along the southern coast on the Jeju Island supports broadleaf evergreen forest and bamboo. Early in the 20th century, South Korea still had a rich variety of wild animals. Among them were sables, martens, foxes, beavers, otters, antelope, bears, lynx, tigers, and leopards. Most of these animals have either disappeared completely or are found only in small numbers in remote mountain areas. There are many endangered animal species living in South Korea. Among them are the Siberian tiger, the Amur leopard, the golden eagle, the lynx, and the Siberian musk deer. Although Korean is the official language, in many regions people speak Korean dialects. Children learn Korean and English in school, and most people speak English fairly well. Some schools offer Mandarin classes as well. The Korean alphabet has 24 letters, and the language does not have any articles and does not follow a word order. The language is similar to Mandarin and Japanese in that it is written and read from top to bottom and from left to right. Korean is the language of both countries of South Korea and North Korea. Apart from using a slightly different accent in some dialects, they can understand and communicate with each other. Much of Korean culture exhibits a strong Chinese influence. Confucianism and Buddhism, along with shamanism, form the foundation of modern Korean thought and habit. After World War II, and especially after the Korean War, modern trends became integrated into South Korean cultural life. Traditional ideas still play an important role, however. Traditional Korean family life centers on rituals, marking life cycle milestones, and the observation of holidays and ancestral rites. The most important passages in a person's life are the completion of the baby's first 100 days of life, one's marriage, and one's 60th birthday, or Hanga, which marks the completion of a full life cycle. According to traditional Korean belief, the spirits of the departed do not leave Earth for several generations. Thus, deceased parents and grandparents are still considered part of the family. Ancestral rites are performed to honor them on death anniversaries and on major holidays. Here in the United States, at least before COVID, when we meet someone for the first time, we typically shake their hand. In South Korea, however, bowing is a traditional way to greet. Handshakes often accompany the bow among men. Your left hand should support your right forearm when shaking hands. Korean women do not always shake hands and may slightly nod instead of a full bow. And you should always bow to individuals when leaving. Two of the most important holidays are the Lunar New Year in late January or early February, and the Chuseok, which translates to Autumn Eve, in late September. These are marked by the gathering of families in the ancestral hometown or at the home of the head of the family, and always involves a feast. Speaking of food, did you know that there are over 100 different types of kimchi in Korean cuisine? Kimchi is a traditional dish made with fermented vegetables such as cabbage or leafy greens and chilies. A typical Korean meal consists of a bowl of rice, a bowl of soup or stew, and some side dishes to pair with. But within that basic structure, there is a deliciously wide variation of dishes for every season and palate. Korean cuisine uses a wide range of vegetables, from wild greens to the leaves of flowers, everything from the sea, including seaweed and jellyfish, and all types of meat and poultry in diverse preparations. Korean cuisine may have numerous ways to pickle vegetables and wild greens for long storage, but they also prize raw fish and raw meat dishes. So a few typical Korean or South Korean dishes include bibimbap, which is mixed rice with 4 to 6 different vegetables and often served with an egg that might be fried or sunny side up or raw, and that is pictured to your left. Bulgogi, which is grilled meat and vegetable dish, which is in the middle. And jjajangmyeon, which is a very popular street food consisting of noodles, vegetables, fried pork or seafood in a thick black bean sauce, and that is pictured to your right. Mandu, which are Korean dumplings, is made with ground beef or pork, but you will typically see them made with chicken or only vegetables. Samgyeopsal is grilled pork belly, and it means 3 layers of meat and fat in Korean. It is probably the most popular barbecue meat in South Korea. It is recognized as the most delicious cut of pork amongst Koreans because it is said that the meat and fat combination makes an incredibly delicious flavor. Hoteok is a Korean sweet pancake, which is a popular Korean street food made from a simple yeast donut with a sweet syrupy filling made with brown sugar, cinnamon, and walnuts. Thank you so much for traveling to South Korea with me today. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you haven't already, make sure you are subscribed to our channel so you never miss a weekly video. And if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and tell me in the comments section whether you have ever tried Korean food, and if so, what is your favorite kind. And I will see you all next Wednesday for another World Traveler Wednesday.